มีกี่คน
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, please proceed to take your seats. The session will start shortly. Excellencies, distinguished guests, please kindly take your seats. We will begin in 1 minute.
Okay. Distinguished delegates, the meeting is called to order. So we shall continue with agenda item 2, Fourth International Conference on Financing for Development, Implications for the Asia-Pacific region. You have already been informed about the document that corresponds to this agenda item. So we shall proceed with the country statements under agenda item 2. May we start with Pakistan, Ambassador Rukhsana Afzal, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a profound honor to deliver these opening remarks at the 5th session of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction, and Financing for Development on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. I extend my deepest appreciation to ESCAP for hosting this crucial dialogue. Many Asia-Pacific governments, including Pakistan, are facing tightening fiscal space, rising debt, higher interest payments, and growing social and climate-related needs are constraining their ability to invest in the SDGs. In line with the severe commitment to enhance domestic resource mobilization, Pakistan's recent experience offers practical lessons on how countries can strengthen revenues, improve expenditure efficiency, and manage fiscal risks. Increasing tax revenue mobilization. A major challenge for Pakistan is the size of its informal economy, estimated at 35 to 40% of the GDP. Bringing this activity into the formal net is essential. Pakistan's strategy focuses on incentivizing digital payments, linking business registration platforms, and simplifying tax regimes for small businesses to make compliance easier. Over the past year, digitalization and enforcement reforms have begun yielding results. Pakistan recorded a historic 1.5 percentage point increase in the tax to GDP ratio in 2025. Tax filers increased from 4.5 million in 2024 to more than 7.2 million by June 2025. A faceless customs clearance system is boosting revenue and reducing clearance time from 52 hours to 12 hours. Point of sale integration and enforcement in the retail sector generated an additional PKR 455 billion in income tax. These reforms demonstrate that digitalization, documentation, and better compliance can significantly enhance domestic resource mobilization. Improving efficiency, fiscal expenditure. Revenue gains alone are not sufficient. Improving spending efficiency is critical for expanding SDG-related investments. Pakistan is rationalizing its public sector development program, which was historically spread across thousands of small and slow-moving projects. Prioritizing high-impact investments, strengthening PC1 and PC2 appraisal quality, and rolling out a digital public investment management system will help ensure better value for every rupee spent. Structural drains also need to be addressed. Energy subsidies and circular debt consumes over 1% of the GDP annually. Targeted subsidies, cost-reflective tariffs, and reducing losses in distribution companies can create substantial fiscal space. State-owned enterprises also impose large fiscal risks. Strengthened governance, performance contracts, and privatization of non-strategic SOEs are essential reforms. Pakistan is also strengthening its medium-term budgetary framework, linking budget allocations to measurable outputs, especially in education, health, and climate resilience. Other measures and lessons from Pakistan. An important lesson is the need to proactively manage contingent fiscal risks. Pakistan has begun preparing a comprehensive fiscal risk statement covering guarantees for energy, transport, and PPPs, as well as circular debt, areas that often create hidden liabilities. Transparent identification and monitoring of these risks are vital for medium-term fiscal stability. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan remains committed to collaborative efforts under ESCAP's guidance. Let us harness these interconnected frameworks to empower vulnerable nations, turning climate challenges into opportunities for equitable prosperity. I thank you all.
Thank you, Excellency. Next on our list is Bangladesh, to be followed by Japan. Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh aligns itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the Group 77. Let me allow to share a few perspectives from Bangladesh. The Sevilla commitment comes at a crucial juncture as we approach the final stretch of the 2030 agenda. We commend its renewed focus on mobilizing financing at a scale, reforming the international financing architecture, and ensuring that no country is left behind the global quest for sustainable development. For Bangladesh, which is preparing for graduation from LDC category, financing for the development remains a defining challenge. While our country economy continues to demonstrate resilience and dynamism, access to affordable, predictable, and concessional finance is still crucial to maintain our momentum toward inclusive and sustainable growth. Mr. Chair, we believe the following priorities are central from Asia-Pacific and Bangladesh perspective. First, enhancing domestic resource mobilization is fundamental. Bangladesh is implementing an integrated national financing framework to align all resources of finance, public and private, domestic and international, with our national development priorities. Yet, to make this framework effective, we need scaled-up capacity building, technology transfer, and tax cooperation that truly reflects the needs of developing countries. Second, international development cooperation must be strengthened and made more predictable. We urge development partners to fulfill their official development assistance commitments of 0.70% of GNI and 0.1% to 0.20% for LDCs. For graduating countries like Bangladesh, we call for a smooth transition in concessional financing to ensure that hard-earned progress is not reserved. Third, we underscored the importance of reforming the global debt architecture. Many developing economies, including ours, face increased fiscal pressures from rising debt servicing costs. We support initiatives under the Sevilla commitment to enhance debt transparency, develop state contingent debt instruments, and ensure responsible sovereign lending and borrowing. Fourth, international trade continues to be a powerful engine for the sustainable development. We call for a fair, inclusive, and rules-based multilateral trading system under WTO, and for international support to strengthen the productive capacity and export competitiveness of developing countries. Post-LDC graduation, Bangladesh needs supportive measures to preserve preferential market access and to integrate more effectively into regional and global value chains. Fifth, we see science, technology, innovation, and digital transformation as key drivers of financing for development. Bangladesh is investing heavily in ICT infrastructure, financial inclusions, and digital public services. Regional cooperation under ESCAP can help bridge digital divides, foster innovation, and unlock new financing opportunity for sustainable development. Mr. Chair, we emphasize the importance of regional cooperation in following up the Sevilla commitments. UNESCAP's roles in convening regional dialogues, strengthening data system, and supporting country-led financing strategies will be essential in translating global commitments into regional and national actions. In conclusion, Bangladesh reaffirms its commitment to the Sevilla commitment and stands ready to work closely with UNESCAP and all the partners to build a more inclusive, resilient, and equitable financial architecture that truly serves the needs of developing countries. I thank you all.
Thank you, Bangladesh. The floor goes to Japan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My intervention today seeks to directly answer the agenda's question. We convened here today to chart the path for a regional follow-up to the landmark Sevilla commitment. FFD4, held just last July, underscored a world grappling with an unprecedented complex of crises. As our Parliamentary Vice Minister Mr. Matsumoto articulated in Sevilla, Japan approached FFD4 with a commitment to advance human security, emphasizing individual protection and empowerment alongside these three crucial priorities: supporting self-help through partnerships, mobilizing private and domestic resources, and promoting transparent and fair development finance. These principles inherently highlight the critical need to leverage existing processes, avoid resource fragmentation, and involve the appropriate skilled people and institutions for effect. The Secretariat's proposal for regional follow-up wisely embodied this pragmatic approach in our view, integrating the Sevilla commitment into the APFSD and utilizing the biennial committee sessions on macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, financing for development makes sense. These leverage practical established platforms to maintain FFD4 discussions and facilitate policy dialogue among member states. Similarly, the Financing for Development series will provide vital and analytical documentation and structuring inputs to the Global Financing for Sustainable Development report, ensures our region's voice is heard on the world stage if done in a fair and appropriate manner. These are not about new structures, but about making existing ones more effective, which we applaud. Crucially, effective delivery on FFD4 outcomes demands that we engage the right expertise. Japan's own FFD4 priorities speak to this. Mobilizing domestic resources, for example, inherently involves national finance ministries and revenue authorities. To truly fulfill the Sevilla commitment, we must ensure that key national institutions are indeed directly engaged. The reality, however, is that the main discussions on global finance for development for our countries and the people who cover FFD4 relevant institutions such as the MDBs, the WTO, and UNCTAD are all predominantly based in our missions in New York and Geneva, along with our technical coverage offices. So it's from these global hubs that we think that appointment of national focal points may practically be led given physical proximity to these institutions. Once designated, these national focal points can then effectively interact with regional mechanisms like our consultative group, bridging the global and regional follow-up. However, given the operational challenges of very different time zones with these regions, it's therefore important that this process is matched with a credible written submission process conducted in an appropriate manner. By embracing these refined actions, we do think that we can empower the Secretariat to pursue a resource-efficient, impactful approach, ensuring the Asia-Pacific region plays its full part in achieving the SDGs by working not just harder, but smarter. We have comments on the actual decision text later, but we will introduce them when we reach that point of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I think the suggestion for written submissions for the consultative group meeting was useful because we could see that many participants in the consultative group are actually not participating on a regular basis. So thank you for the suggestion. Any other country delegation that wishes to take the floor? The United States of America, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good to see you again up on the dais. The United States thanks UNESCAP for organizing this week's discussion. As President Trump has made clear over the last 10 months, the way the United States approaches development assistance, multilateral engagement, and the UN in general has changed. The United States is not walking away from the multilateral system, however. Instead, we are determined to make it work as it was intended. That means moving away from bloated ideological multilateralism and toward practical reforms that make the UN leaner, more effective, and accountable to the nations that fund it. We welcome partners willing to take that journey with us as we seek to get the UN back to basics. As we think about the topic at hand this week, let me offer a few points relevant to this discussion. First, the United States will continue to put trade over aid. We believe in trade that is free, fair, and above all, reciprocal. Particularly in Asia and the Pacific, we can clearly see trade's impact on expanding economic growth, having lifted millions out of poverty in recent decades. Trade, not aid, is where we should look to first to enable development. When the United States does provide foreign assistance, it will be targeted and time-limited. We will favor those nations that have demonstrated the ability and willingness to help themselves, and will target our resources to areas that have multiplier effects and catalyze durable investment by the private sector, including American companies. On financing, the U.S. commitment to international cooperation and long-term economic development remains steadfast. However, we regret it was not possible to achieve an outcome document in Seville that could have enjoyed unanimous support. However, I will reiterate that we will not support initiatives that impose new requirements, create duplicative new structures, and impinge upon the sovereignty of member states. The Seville Agreement did just that, unfortunately, and accordingly, we could not support it. On debt, the United States views proposals that envision a role for the UN in the global debt architecture as unacceptable. Creditors and borrowers should remain at the core of sovereign debt discussions, supported by the expert advice of the IMF and World Bank. We reject the injection of third-party interference, including a UN intergovernmental process on sovereign debt, or a working group to develop a duplicative set of borrowing and lending principles. The IMF and the World Bank should remain at the heart of the sovereign debt architecture, and we insist that the UN respect the independent governance of the IFIs. Finally, I will repeat what we have said in other fora. The United States will no longer support the expenditure of UN development funds to support a member state that is no longer a developing country. A country that can fund its own space program and build aircraft carriers should not receive UN development assistance. Each UN dollar spent in a now developed country is $1 less for countries that truly need that funding. Accordingly, we will no longer support such expenditures. Colleagues, the United States has changed its approach at the UN. We seek a body that is more effective in achieving the UN's core mission, a body that does not create more meetings or more reports, but rather drives real results. We seek a UN that gets back to basics, a UN that works. We hope many of you will join us in reforming this institution, including on issues pertaining to development finance. Thank you.
Thank you, the US. The message is clear. Any other country delegation? That does not seem to be the case. IFAD is in the room. That also does not seem to be the case. So we move to other entities, and we would like to start with APRCEM to represent civil society voices.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of Asia Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, APRCEM. We deliver this statement at a time of overlapping global crisis. The current financial system continues to drive inequality, not reducing it. Public goods are underfunded, climate finance promises remain unmet, and care work, mostly by women, continues to be invisible and undervalued. Yet the civil commitment failed to confront these structural problems. Instead, it reinforced private finance, voluntary commitment, and austerity. We refuse to accept the status quo with only 5 years left to achieve the 2030 agenda. We call for bold, transformative changes grounded in grassroots leadership, women's rights, indigenous people, workers, and community on the front lines. We demand accountability and justice to deliver genuine macroeconomic transformation and development justice. Specifically on debt, we reiterate our call for debt cancellation and repatriation for the Global South. We need a South-led intergovernmental debt workout mechanism and meaningful civil society participation in the Civil Debt Forum and borrower blocks. Debt cancellation is also essential for countries to scale up climate action instead of debt servicing. On private finance, we urge the creation of a UN intergovernmental process to review PPP, blended finance, SDG investment bonds, and other private finance instruments, assessing their impact on fiscal space, human rights, labor rights, and the environment. On trade and investment, we call for a mandate to build a new international investment framework grounded in reparation, replacing ISDS with a system based on cooperation, accountability, transparency, and the primacy of human rights. Finally, on follow-up and review, while we welcome the integration of FFD into the regional forums on sustainable development, civil society must be to meaningfully participate and provide substantive input. A dedicated FFD session in the APFSD must be institutionalized. We also insist that SDG 17 continue to be reviewed as a core component of the means of implementation, not replaced by the civil commitment, and retain its full scope and dedicated roundtable at APFSD. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, APRCEM. Those suggestions are well noted. We would like to hear from youth representatives from the Asian Institute of Technology.
Excellency, distinguished delegate, college and fellow youth, my name is Cát from Vietnam. I'm speaking on behalf of the Asian Institute of Technology and designated youth representative from the Asia-Pacific region. As we gather following the adoption of Seville's commitment, we recognize that the Asia-Pacific region faces widening SDG financing gap, rising debt vulnerabilities, and increasing climate risks that directly affect opportunities for young people. This moment matters because today's financing choice will determine whether our generation inherits sustainable growth, equitable access to opportunity, and climate resilience, or long-term debt burden and reduced fiscal space. Despite growing monotone in global and regional financing agenda, many young people still encounter barriers that limit their ability to fully contribute in sustainable development across Asia-Pacific. They include high public debt, reducing fiscal space for investment in education, innovation, job creation for young people, weak financial literacy, and unequal digital access, which restricts youth participation in digital and green economies, youth exclusion from decision-making, especially in national financing framework, budget planning, and climate-related fiscal reform. Across the region, youth continue to demonstrate creativity, leadership, innovation, contributing to sustainable finance, climate resilience, digital transformation, and community-driven solutions. Young people already contribute practical solutions to financing for development. To ensure a financing system that works for all, we urge governments and the United Nations to adopt future forward-looking measures that strengthen inclusion, resilience, and sustainability across the Asia-Pacific region. Our actionable recommendations include create youth accessible financing mechanisms, include concessional loan, guarantee, and blend finance facility to support youth innovation and SDG-aligned enterprise. Second, establish dedicated youth venture fund for SDG innovation, provide early-stage capital for young entrepreneurs working in clean energy, technology, and digital public goods. Third is deliver technical assistance for youth participation in climate finance and carbon market, includes capacity building in MRV, carbon pricing, and project development. Four is support debt sustainability framework to protect fiscal space for future investment benefiting youth Lastly, ensure meaningful youth participation in integrated national financing framework, SDG financing strategy, and climate-related budgeting. As youth, we stand ready for collaborate, continue, and co-create the solution needed for advanced sustainable development financing. We call on government and United Nations to recognize youth not only as beneficiary, but as a financial thinker, innovator, and eco-partner. We urge you to invest in youth capacity, create an enabling financing ecosystem to commit to transparent, inclusive, and future-proof financial system that safeguard opportunity for next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. We would certainly look forward to the youth for practical and forward-looking solutions for financing for development. With that, we have exhausted the list of requests from the floor. Is there any additional request? I see ILO. You have the floor, please.
So thanks very much, Chair. The ILO underscores the importance of the work of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy, Poverty Reduction, and Financing for Development. In the context of the severe commitment on financing for development, 3 priority areas will shape whether the Asia-Pacific region fully benefits from forthcoming global efforts. The first one is advancing decent work. Financing for development must place strong emphasis on job creation, robust social protection systems, and respect for international labor standards. These are critical elements for the region's large and diverse workforce. The second one is financing a just transition. Investment strategies should support a just transition in response to climate change, including funding for reskilling workers in climate-vulnerable sectors and promoting green and sustainable employment opportunities, ensuring no worker is left behind. The third one is strengthening social dialogue. It is essential that employers and workers' organizations are actively involved in the design and implementation of financing for development policies to ensure that these policies are equitable, effective, and sustainable. Finally, the ILO values its continued collaboration with ESCAP, particularly through the Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division, MPFSD, as well as with other relevant divisions. I thank you all.
Thank you, ILO. No worker is left behind. I'll certainly take back that message, especially in the region where informality dominates the employment sector. Any other requests? That does not seem to be the case. So at this juncture, we can take a look at the draft decision under this particular agenda item 2. And the draft decision is contained in ESCAP/CMPF 5/2. Can we have it uploaded on screen, please? Good. So this had been circulated earlier. I think I heard Japan, who said that they had some comments on the decision, but anyone else, please come forward. Japan, to start with.
Thank you. My comments are first questions on the lack of clarity in some of the language. For example, we're asked to decide to support an enhanced regional follow-up. What does this exactly, what is this exactly pointing to? I think we should probably cite what we exactly mean. So if we were to say this, we have suggestions to quote from the report, which we can cite. Should I cite the verbiage now, or?
Yep, that would be helpful, please.
Okay. So delete support and enhanced, because we don't know what this enhanced follow-up really entails. And we think we should cut and paste from paragraph 42E of the conference report, provide relevant inputs to the annual financing for sustainable development report to facilitate and then regional follow-up to the Sevilla, blah, blah, blah.
Please repeat at dictation speed.
Okay, so provide relevant inputs to the annual financing for sustainable development report to facilitate and this comes from basically paragraph 42E of the conference report. And I think this way it's very concrete and easy to understand what we're deciding. And with regard to the last sentence, we wonder whether we need this sentence out of the points that I made. I don't know who's going to nominate the national focal points for the FFD4 process, whether it's our people in New York or whether it's here or whatever, but it probably should be centralized. And my guess is that they're doing so much follow-up discussions in New York on FFD4 is that they're probably driving the process. So I suggest maybe we don't need this one. Happy for others to say some thoughts. Thanks.
Okay. That's well noted. We'll leave it like that for the time being. Any other comments? The UK, please.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to understand what the financial implications of supporting an enhanced regional follow-up would be. And alongside that, we'd like to register our support for Japan's amendment there.
Well noted. Any other comments? The US, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also welcome a little bit more concept from the Secretariat on funding and whether this is through existing mechanisms. My understanding is that it is, but if so, it may be useful to add some language. And the annual financing for sustainable development report, that's an existing report, is that correct? Or is that part of Seville? Because that's a question for Japan. And then I'll conclude by saying, I don't have instructions from Capital on this, as per always, unfortunately. And so, as I mentioned, we did not join Seville, so we may need to just dissociate from this generally. So I'm offering only limited changes at this time. Thank you.
Well noted. Regarding the annual report, any clarification?
Well, I think this was a question to Japan. They refer to, if I understand, they're referring to the Interagency Task Force report prepared by DESA. Is that the one you're referring to? But please.
Well, should I pull up the paragraph 42E in your conference document?
Which conference?
Paragraph 42E in your conference document for this agenda. That's where I just kind of pulled that from. But we're just happy to say, for countries to provide relevant inputs to the process or something like that. Under existing mechanisms or under existing processes or documents. If maybe the Secretariat or the Chair can help capture this meeting. We support the idea of leveraging existing publications or existing modalities so that it's a very natural process for all of us to be encouraged to participate in this process.
Right. So the report that you're referring to is the one by DESA that the Secretariat colleague just mentioned.
So this is a question to the Secretariat. How do you actually feed through it? And the reason why we're saying this is that we recall last fall when we were discussing about inputs from ESCAP to this process. And I don't think, the Secretariat certainly put it in, but we didn't really have, an input process in that, like in an explicit way. So, maybe, we can build on that and perhaps build in a more explicit input process. It's just an idea. But what is the best natural way to do that, leveraging existing publications and structures from the Secretariat's point of view, and maybe you can help us reflect this in the text. Thank you.
Right, well noted.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Japan. Very clear now. You're talking about the background document for the agenda item. Indeed, I've seen it, 42E. It is referring to the Interagency Task Force on FFD prepared by DESA, to which, as part of the 62 agencies give inputs to that, we provide regular inputs. They are primarily around from the technical aspects. The inputs are solicited across the system, across all members. As I said, there are 62 members globally. Primarily, the report is led by DESA, IMF, World Bank, and UNCTAD, and UNDP. But there are all entities, UN entities involved, including ESCAP. So we share inputs if we have some work on that issues, either as a box or as a short para, because the word limits are very short. Then we are, the DESA shares a draft of the chapters with us, and we have an opportunity to share comments, suggestions, feedback from our perspective, again, mostly on the technical side, not on the substance. That report forms the basis of the background document that is then negotiated or discussed with member states at ECOSOC FFD in April, right? And that's where the member states gave their inputs, feedback, suggestions, yes, no, additions, further work, whatever that emerges from that, and that feeds into the next year's cycle of the report. That's how at least we have been engaged so far. Now that we have severe commitment, now that we are trying to align the global processes in line with the ongoing work, what we can do is, for instance, in the same document that you referred to, for instance, this is 42A, which refers to having financing for development discussions at the Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, APFSD, right? That takes place in the third week of February. What we can try and do is have that outcome shared, because that will be discussed with member states, shared with the New York as part of the inputs from Asia Pacific. But they're early days. We don't know the timelines yet. We don't know the agenda finalized yet of the APFSD. So this year, it may not be exactly aligned, but that's the intention, essentially. So that's basically the structure, the approach. From the technical side, we continue to give inputs and then try and see anything that comes from this committee, for instance, formality, we can feed that into that process also. Anything that comes on the APFSD, if it becomes part of the discussions, that can be fed into the process itself. So that's sort of the trying to strengthen it, going from only technical inputs to member states-driven perspectives as well.
I think the main point is, yes, to answer to the US's question, this is an existing report, which this follow-up would be feeding into. And the second issue is, when we are talking about relevant inputs to this annual report, one thing that's stated in paragraph 42E, the last sentence particularly, which says that inputs provided by the Secretariat could be structured to reflect regional priorities, challenges, and policy options related to its, that is, the severe commitments, implementation. So when we talk about relevant inputs, that's how at least I myself would be reading that. But having heard the Secretariat, one question remains. When we were talking about supporting an enhanced regional follow-up, that probably also included the other options that have been provided under Section 3, which includes A, B, C, D, and of course E under paragraph 42. So if we only focus on the annual report issue, whether we lose out some of the elements concerning the other follow-ups that were being talked about. I think in my dummy's understanding, that's how I'm kind of reading this whole issue. Yeah, who was asking for the floor? Japan?
Maybe one can encapsulate in a more general way, maybe decides to provide relevant inputs from existing processes to facilitate blah, blah, blah. Would that be would that allow the Secretariat to operationalize? Do we need, like, within existing, the usual caveat, or would that be unnecessary to prevent an PBI which won't be accommodated under UN 80?
That would be helpful because that would then include the APFSD and other biennial sessions and other things, the existing mechanisms, yes.
Okay.
Good, thank you for that flexibility. Any other comments? Yes, please.
I think that's, again, with my caveat of lack of instruction, I think that's a useful change. Provide relevant inputs from existing processes. Okay, and then I think it may be useful to have some sort of within existing resources caveat like we often do on these things. So decides to provide, comma, within existing resources, comma, relevant inputs, da 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 da. I'm trying to propose as much as I can to be able to join this on Friday, again with the caveat that I'm not able to do that yet. And then I think Japan has further on the last sentence.
Right. Yeah, any comments on this new addition within existing resources? I see no immediate comments. About the last sentence, it just encourages, it does not really mandate the Secretariat to do that. So yes, I mean, of course, this work is probably being followed up in New York and other places, but can we just encourage states to nominate focal points? Yeah, Japan.
Is this language, if we keep it, do we get the note verbal from the Secretariat asking us to, you know, appoint a national focal point? And of course, we have to write a cable, and that's additional work. So I'm just wondering what this implies for us.
Duplication to be avoided, of course. I mean, if it's happening in New York already, probably, I mean, you won't get the note verbal, but just a word of encouragement. Yes, the US, please.
Maybe I'll propose text to try to, again, make it more likely I can join. And I might just propose that we, rather than encourage, takes note of the Sevilla commitments call for member states to nominate national focal points on financing for development. Thank you.
Helpful, thank you. So we can delete as outlined in the Sevilla commitment at the end. Okay, let's go back to the first sentence. A lot of qualifying words, existing resources, relevant inputs, existing processes. But can we live with this? So the general understanding would be that we would be looking at all the proposals that are contained in Section 3, paragraph 42. Yes, the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to get some clarification about the word in existing processes. Is it about the processes that are going under the auspice of ESCAP? I see the Secretariat knocked, so it's indeed like this. Only about the processes that we do work under the ESCAP agenda.
Yes, if the Secretariat has nodded, I can only agree with that. I mean, as I said, I mean, if you look at paragraph 42, it talks about the annual APFSD, which is coming up next February, the biennial sessions of the committee that is meeting right now, also the consultative group on financing strategies, the biennial financing for development series, and of course the DESA report that ESCAP feeds into. So all these are combined in the notion of existing processes. That would be my understanding. Good. Any other queries, clarification, comments? Let's try to clean up the text. Hopefully the US can join without dissociating. Yeah. Okay. Let's clean up the text, please. The Secretariat can leave with this? Good. So, this is, as we say, agreed ad ref. Good. So we can then move to, please write agreed ad ref so that we don't have any surprises later on. Thank you. Great. Okay, so time to move to the next agenda item. But is there any announcements to be made? Not really. We have the speakers for the next item waiting. So let's move on to that. Okay. Great. So we shall take up agenda item 3, macroeconomic implications of pursuing climate resilient development, the committee document. ESCAP/CMPF5/3 has been shared in advance to inform the deliberations of the committee on the topic. May I invite Mr. Hamza Ali Malik, Director of Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division, to please introduce the agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, Vice Chairs, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Both changing climate conditions and climate actions have notable, complex, and interrelated macroeconomic implications. They affect productivity and long-term economic prospects, trade structures, employment patterns, poverty levels, inflation dynamics, financial stability, and public debt sustainability. This points towards a need for a transition towards climate-resilient development pathways. However, doing so is not easy and presents some risks and offers some opportunities. On the one hand, there is significant potential for new industries, technological advancement, and job creation, and on the other, the transition towards climate-resilient development entails adjustment costs, competitive pressures, and risks to sectors and communities that are less well prepared. So, drawn from our policy research presented in the 2025 edition of the Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific, the document ESCAP/CMPF5/3 examines the exposure of macroeconomic outcomes to risks posed by changing climate conditions and the needed economic transformation in Asia and the Pacific. It also discusses the economic and institutional capacities of countries to cope with these risks. In our methodology, the exposure is measured by expected output losses from climate-resilient disasters relative to GDP, the vulnerability of agriculture output to climate hazards, the extent to which production is carbon intensive, and the inflationary pressures that changing climate conditions and likely climate action are likely to generate. Coping capacity, on the other hand, captures the resources, capabilities, and institutional frameworks that determine how effectively a country can respond to and manage the impacts of changing climate conditions and the transition pressures. This includes fiscal space, the strength of financial system, the quality of public governance and institutions, technological capabilities, and skills of the labor force. Our analysis finds that some countries in the region are facing high exposure to climate change and transition-related shocks due to carbon-intensive economic structures or external trade dependencies, while others face constraints in mobilizing fiscal resources, diversifying their economies, or adapting their labor markets. Highlighting examples from Asia-Pacific countries, we also discuss how fiscal and monetary policy frameworks and institutional alignment can be adapted to better support long-term macroeconomic resilience while pursuing climate-resilient development. So very briefly, fiscal policy will need to combine targeted public investment with measures to support affected workers and industries, alongside the development of innovative financing mechanisms. Monetary and financial sector policies should be aimed at maintaining macro financial stability while facilitating capital flows into sectors that are aligned with the low-emission, resilient economy objectives. Trade and exchange rate policies may also need to recalibrate to mitigate competitiveness risks and enable participation in emerging global value chains. Strengthening institutional capacity and improving policy coordination will be critical to manage these adjustments effectively. This includes developing robust analytical tools for assessing transition impacts, enhancing interagency mechanisms to align sectoral policies with macroeconomic objectives, and building stakeholder consensus on long-term development ambitions. Regional cooperation can play an important role in sharing experiences, harmonizing standards, and mobilizing resources to assist economies at different stages of readiness. I invite the committee members to discuss the policy issues related to macroeconomic policy making for long-term economic prosperity amid changing climate conditions and the need for economic transition. It will also be very enlightening to learn how policymakers in countries are addressing such issues. My team and I look forward to receiving your feedback on these issues. This would help us in our ongoing and forthcoming analytical research and technical assistance work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Distinguished delegates, we shall now have an expert discussion on the agenda item. May I invite Mr. Vatcharin Sirimanitham, Chief of Macroeconomic Policy and Analysis Section, and designated experts to the rostrum, please.
Thank you, Chair. Today, let's start the expert discussion. We are extremely delighted to have two really knowledgeable and distinguished experts with us, who will talk about the perspective of the nexus between macroeconomic and climate issues. The two experts today, on my left first is the Professor Shubhaka Dakal from the Department of the Energy and Climate Change from the Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok. And to my right is the Mr. Malin Nielsen, who is the Deputy Regional Director and representative of the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Before I give the floor to our speaker, may I remind that the time is limited, so kindly keep your remark to 3 minutes maximum. So I would like to start with Professor Dakal first. So I would like to hear your view on many people pursuing climate resilient development and green transition as risks. But at the same time, many other people also think of them as opportunities. In this aspect, it's important because the transition may go nowhere unless a policymaker and people view this as an opportunity. What should be the role of the researcher in this context? Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think this is a $1 million question, that climate resilient development is something not very easy because we do have lots of political economy associated with it, including the economics and the societal choices. Given the viewpoint that I'm coming from research, I would say that there are a couple of important points there. First, the role of research should be to show the societal cost of not doing, cost of inaction. So a very clear demonstration of cost of inaction versus cost of action is what helps us to move forward. There, of course, we have a lot of countries have made a lot of their own assessments in their NDCs, NAPs, how much investment is needed, how much is the gap is there. All those costs and the benefits need to be taken into account. And second important point is to show the opportunities and co-benefits. Opportunities and co-benefits are very, very important. Their research community have very strong role to play. So all the options, what works, what does not work, in what context a particular option works. So this kind of showing very clear costs and benefits and potentials and co-benefits linking to other SDGs, not only SDG 13, for example, and making a case is very important where common ground could be found. Then also the important is a question of researchers working with the policy community and the society at large to communicate various options, various policies, their effectiveness, their design features, so as to create a common voice and common ground. This is very important. For example, one area which we have been discussing intensively is the issue of financing. Globally, in 2023, some estimates show that we have $1.9 trillion climate financing happening, where most of the financing is going to mitigation and not much to adaptation. Now, if we really look at the global need for financing, some of the estimates put it into the value of $8 to $9 trillion a year by 2030, which means that we have a gap there in a huge proportion. So how to bridge that gap is very important, because that bridging that gap will help us to build the climate resilient development. And that money has to come from public sector, expanding the fiscal space, also from the private sector with the help of the innovative financing mechanism, such as blended finance, green bond, and bringing more and more capital markets where trillions of hundreds of $trillions lies to bring it into the sector which are very relevant to the climate resilient development. So how to do that? There are lots of options and there are a lot of opportunities. In the interest of time, I'll not get into those opportunities, but I'd only say that we still have a plenty of money in the system to bring, and that requires very strong work from the policymakers, private sector, civil society, and we as a researcher.
Right, thank you so much, and for especially pointing out the importance of this evidence-based policy making process. So with the time, I would like to turn to Ms. Nielsen. A successful path toward the climate resilience, development, and green transition require many enabling factors. Okay, a lot of this is within control of the government and regulatory body, and many other also outside of their control. But in this context, in your opinion, what is the most important strength of our region, Asia and the Pacific, and what are some of the specific impediments? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very, very much for that question. The region definitely has a lot of strengths. Asia-Pacific region combines enormous vulnerability with enormous potential. Smaller economies face acute climate risk, yet the region is also the home to global frontrunners in green technology, renewable energy, manufacturing, and innovative policy instruments. So this combination, high exposure by high capability, is one of Asia and Pacific's strengths. But let me highlight 3 core strengths. First one being political momentum and planning frameworks are improving. All the countries in this region, they have updated their NDCs, 20 have already submitted NDC 3.0. 23 countries in this region now have long-term low emissions development strategies, including all the major emitters. Many governments are integrating mitigation and adaptations into their national development plans, which is critical for whole of economy transformation. So that's the first core strength that I'd like to highlight. The second one is rapid technology uptake is changing the economics of transition. Renewable energy is already the cheapest option in most countries in this region. Solar and wind consistently outcompete fossil fuels, and battery costs have fallen 80% in the last decade. Electric vehicle adaptation accelerating, and globally 20% of new sales, and in India, it's close to 8% in 2024. So energy efficiency, technologies, just to state it, I think it's kind of obvious, but I want to state it anyway, is that it can deliver immediate emissions reduction at a very, very low cost. And then the third core strength is the growing efforts to align the financial system. 10 of the Asian Pacific countries have issued sustainable finance taxonomies. Several more are preparing theirs. And here I just have to plug a little bit for my colleagues at UNEP-FI, they have been working with banks and insurers in the region and are helping shift portfolios to build in-house risk capacities and adopt climate-related disclosures and stress testing tools. But you also asked me about the impediments, so I'm gonna quickly speak to those as well. The bad news is emissions are still rising. The region accounted for around 60% of global emissions growth under 2024. The latest emissions gap report, which United Nations Environment Programme issues, estimates that at the current pace, the world is heading toward a 2.5 Celsius degrees of warming, which is still far above Paris-aligned pathways. The second impediment is adaptation planning and investment lag significantly. Only about 20 countries have adopted national adaptation plans. And without scaled up adaptation finance, climate shocks will continue to undermine the development gains that we have already made. And then the third one, finance. Finance, particularly for smaller economies, remains a bottleneck. Climate finance to the region was about 812 billion in 2023. That's less than 10% of overall investment and concentrated heavily in mitigation and not in adaptation, and in a few larger economies. So finally, the just transition challenge is also real. Countries need stronger social protection systems, reskilling policies, and fiscal frameworks that protect vulnerable households from transition cost. And so basically, in short, if I may, to say that Asian Pacific has the policy momentum, the technology, and the financial architecture is emerging, but the scale and speed must increase dramatically, with major economies acting as regional knowledge leaders. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for the giving a balanced observation. But I have to say that at least I'm more optimistic than 10 minutes ago about this green transition. In this discussion, we heard about the availability of our financial resources, the progress on the taxonomy to channel the money where it is needed, about the increasing the technology, as well as and the improvement of political commitment. So before I close this session, just 1 minute for each of you. Okay, if you want our delegate to an audience to just remember or take away one idea or one message in less than a minute, what would that be?
I would say that we have solutions, we have opportunities. It's for us how to proactively move to tap those opportunities and tap the solutions. So their very strong role is a political will and a very strong role of policymakers. Without that, the big problem that we have for climate resilient development would be much distant than what we see.
Transparency. Transparency is the cornerstone of credible, investable, and fair transition. This region is very well placed to develop harmonized definition and methodologies, strengthen data and reporting capacity, and to set clear timeline to shift the voluntary to mandatory climate disclosure. So, transparency.
Thank you so much for both Professor Dakar and Ms. Nielsen for your informative session, and thank you for coming and sharing your insight again. I hope this will be benefiting the subsequent deliberation of our committee. So now let me give the floor back to our chair for interventions and a statement from our member state. Thank you so much for the UNO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sirimanitham, Mr. Dhakal, and Ms. Nielsen for that expert discussion and for setting the tone for the further deliberations. Right now, I mean, as we speak, of course, the COP30 is going on at Belém in Brazil. And one of the core documents that this year's conference is looking at is titled the Baku to Belém Roadmap towards this 1.3 million US dollars commitment that the international community is envisaging. So that's a roadmap document that has been jointly prepared by the presidencies of Azerbaijan and Brazil, and would perhaps constitute one of the anchors for subsequent discussions concerning climate financing. So just wanted to refer to that document because I personally feel that those who are interested in climate financing would find a lot of food for thought, or a lot of things to unpack in that particular document. So with that, it's our pleasure to start the country statements with the Maldives. May I request the Honorable Minister of State for Finance and Planning to kindly deliver this statement.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. For the Maldives, climate resilient development is not only central to our economic stability and long-term growth. It is fundamental to safeguard our future as a nation. For a small island economy with limited fiscal space, high public debt, and a small domestic capital market, repeated climate shocks create significant economic risk. Further, the Maldives remain heavily reliant on imported diesel for electricity generation, leaving our economy vulnerable to global fuel price swings that drastically affect our fiscal position, balance of payments, and inflation. While the risks are clear, the Maldives is taking deliberate steps to strengthen our economic resilience and shift onto a more sustainable path. Our green tax on inbound tourists continue to provide a vital source of funding for environmental protection and climate adaptation efforts. It enables us to leverage the strength of our tourism sector to support climate resilience, ensuring a predictable stream of domestic financing even within tight fiscal limits. We are also nearing the completion of a climate budget tagging exercise, which will, for the first time, provide a full picture of climate-related spending across government, enabling us to prioritize adaptation and resilience investments with greater precision. But the scale of the challenge is far beyond what any small island economy can manage alone. transition into renewable energy, strengthening coastal defenses, and climate-proofing infrastructure demand long-term, predictable and affordable financing, without which essential adaptation can quickly turn into added debt pressure. This is why access to concessional and blended financing mechanism aligned with vulnerability rather than income is critical for countries like ours. Innovative instruments such as sustainability-linked bonds, carbon credit revenue streams, and potential debt for climate swaps offer valuable pathways for scaling climate finance. But to be truly effective, they need international frameworks that reduce transaction costs and strengthen the creditworthiness of small island issuers. As we move through this ambitious climate transition, we must remain attentive to its impacts on labor markets, workers, and small businesses affected by the shift from fossil fuel-based economies will need support to adapt, reskill, and access opportunities in the green economy. A just and inclusive transition is essential to ensure that no one is left behind. We reaffirm our commitment to advancing the SDGs, but our ability to do so depends on securing the fiscal space needed to adapt to escalating climate risk. In this regard, the Maldives welcomes the direction set by the Sevilla commitment. Particularly, it emphasizes on fair access to financing for vulnerable countries and the need to scale up long-term investment for climate-resilient development. The Maldives has initiated the preparation of its long-term national development plan, assisted by our development partners, including ESCAP, and aim at steering strategic decisions and shaping a shared national vision through to 2040. We look forward to working closely with ESCAP and our regional partners to advance these priorities and to ensure that climate resilience and economic stability progress hand in hand for us, for all small island nations. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We shall next hear from the Russian Federation, followed by Mongolia.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, изменение климата оказывает существенное влияние на макроэкономическую ситуацию, конкурентоспособность отраслей и социальное благополучие населения. Для России, обладающей огромной территорией, разнообразием природно-климатических условий, обширной арктической зоной, вопрос адаптации экономики к новым климатическим реалиям приобретает стратегическое значение. В нашей стране проводится активная работа по реализации стратегии экономического развития с низким уровнем выбросов парниковых газов. В 2023 году президент Российской Федерации Владимир Путин утвердил обновленную национальную климатическую доктрину, которая закрепила цель достижения углеродной нейтральности к 2060 году. Сформирована законодательная основа для климатической политики. Действует федеральный закон о регулировании выбросов парниковых газов, вводится обязательная отчетность крупных эмиттентов, разворачивается система реализации климатических проектов. Формируется комплексная инфраструктура для низкоэмиссионного развития. Разработана национальная таксономия экологически ориентированных проектов, выпущены зеленые и адаптационные облигации. На финансовом рынке создан сектор устойчивого развития. В рамках регионального эксперимента с 2021 года в Сахалинской области тестируется модель комплексного регулирования выбросов. В ходе проекта введено квотирование выбросов парниковых газов, обязательная верификация углеродной отчетности, а также реализация программ по внедрению энергоэффективных технологий и переводу транспорта на природный газ. Как результат, к концу 2024 года Сахалин достиг углеродной нейтральности. Здесь же состоялась первая продажа российских углеродных единиц что стало практическим шагом в формировании национального рынка климатических инициатив. В этом году Россия представила второй определяемый на национальном уровне вклад в рамках реализации Парижского соглашения с обновленными целевыми показателями сокращения выбросов парниковых газов, который предусматривает к 2035 году сократить этот показатель до 65-67% от уровня 1990 года. Уважаемые коллеги, Российская Федерация неизменно подчеркивает, что переход к стратегиям экономического развития с низким уровнем выбросов парниковых газов должен быть справедливым, экономически рациональным, социально ответственным, основываться на проверенных и доказанных научных данных и учитывать специфику социально-экономических и природно-географических условий стран. Мы последовательно выступаем за сбалансированный подход к обеспечению всеобщего доступа к недорогим, надежным, устойчивым и современным источникам энергии для всех, согласно повестке 2030. При этом всегда акцентируем внимание на том, что переход к новым энергетическим системам должен быть поэтапным, учитывать национальные особенности, структуру экономики, уровень технологического развития. Нельзя допустить, чтобы вместо катализатора модернизации, инноваций и экономического развития стран региона климатическая повестка стала инструментом торговой, инвестиционной или технологической дискриминации, а еще хуже – инструментом нечистоплотной конкуренции. В заключение хотели бы вновь подтвердить приверженность нашей страны конструктивному и равноправному сотрудничеству по всем аспектам макроэкономической проблематики в контексте комплексного рассмотрения всех множественных экологических вызовов, а не только климатических, с которыми сталкивается регион. В этой связи считаем принципиально важным скорректировать проект решения, предлагаемого для утверждения комитетом в рамках этого пункта повестки дня, и заменить формулировку «in the context of changing climate conditions» на «in the context of multiple
Russian
environmental
Federation,
challenges».
we will come to the decision after the deliberations. Thank you.
Спасибо, господин председатель. На этом у меня все.
Mongolia, to be followed by China, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Climate change poses a growing threat to economic stability, fiscal sustainability, and long-term development goals. Asia-Pacific countries face mounting macroeconomic vulnerabilities due to increasingly frequent and intense climate events, declining productivity in climate-sensitive sectors, and transition risks associated with the shift to low-carbon economies. Recent ESCAP edition of Economic and Social Survey underscores how climate-related shocks reduce GDP growth, heighten inflation, and worsen fiscal balances. For vulnerable economies, these effects are compounded by low adaptive capacity, limited fiscal space, and high exposure to commodity price volatility. Given the country's carbon-intensive economic structure and vulnerability to climate impacts, Mongolia is committed to advancing climate-resilient development as a pathway to inclusive, sustainable, and long-term economic prosperity. Guided by national climate goals, Mongolia aims to reduce emissions, enhance adaptation, and integrate climate risks into macroeconomic and financial decision-making frameworks. The government of Mongolia appreciates ESCAP continued support in developing strategic, policy-relevant solutions tailored to Mongolia's unique context as a landlocked, climate-vulnerable economy. Mr. Chair, with ESCAP's support, Mongolia has taken major steps to integrate climate risks into macroeconomic and financial systems. In 2024-2025, the Bank of Mongolia completed its first climate stress test with 7 commercial banks. Guidelines for climate-related financial disclosures aligned with international financial reporting standards were published and launched in May 2025. These initiatives made Mongolia the first landlocked developing country to conduct a comprehensive climate scenario analysis and introduce national disclosure guidelines aligned with the international standards. In addition, the Climate Invest initiative enabled Mongolia to analyze green investment gaps and develop a pipeline of climate-aligned projects, especially in non-infrastructure sectors. The The Ministry of Economy and Development established a Green Finance Unit and committed to embedding climate finance strategies into national policy. More than 170 stakeholders participated in national capacity building workshops in 2024-2025, enhancing local capacity to develop bankable projects. Mr. Chair, in conclusion, Mongolia reaffirms its dedication to climate resilient development and commends ESCAP for its critical role in advancing macroeconomic and financial innovation in support of this goal. We welcome the continued support of ESCAP in advancing these efforts and look forward to enhanced regional cooperation to build a climate resilient and inclusive Asia-Pacific. I thank you.
Thank you, Mongolia. We will hear from China, to be followed by Indonesia.
谢谢主席先生。中国政府全面贯彻创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的新发展理念，积极将应对气候变化纳入经济和社会发展规划考量，坚定不移走生态优先、集约、节约、绿色低碳、高质量发展道路，加快生产方式绿色转型，协同推进降碳、减污、扩绿增长，不断推进气候适应性发展。我们坚持全面转型，将绿色转型的要求融入经济社会发展全局，全方位、全领域、全地域推进。我们坚持协同转型，充分考虑不同地区、不同行业的发展实际，坚持统筹推进与重点突破相结合，科学设定绿色转型的时间表、路线图、施工图，鼓励有条件的地区和行业先行探索。我们坚持创新转型，强化支撑绿色转型的科技、政策、制度和商业模式创新，因地制宜发展新质生产力，完善生态文明制度体系，为绿色转型提供更强创新动能和制度保障。我们坚持安全转型，统筹处理好发展和减排，整体和局部、当前和长远、政府和市场的关系，妥善防范化解绿色转型面临的内外部风险，切实保障粮食安全、生产链、供应链安全，更好保障人民群众生产生活。在上述理念指引下，“十四五”期间，中国经济实现了质的有效提升和量的合理增长，绿色转型成效显著。中国已构建起全球最大、发展最快的可再生能源体系，成为全球能耗强度下降最快的国家之一。绿色生产力不断形成，持续丰富全球绿色产品供给。上个月，中国共产党20届四中全会通过了关于制定国民经济和社会发展第15个5年规划的建议，对未来5年加快经济社会发展全面绿色转型做出了进一步部署。作为世界上最大的发展中国家和全球南方的一员，我们愿同各方分享科学制定和接续实施中长期经济发展规划的有益经验，助力各国更好应对气候变化、绿色转型，为加速落实2030年可持续发展目标做出贡献。谢谢主席。
Thank you, China. Indonesia, to be followed by Fiji.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. For Indonesia, as mentioned before, climate resilience development presents a dual reality, immense opportunities alongside significant structural challenges. In terms of opportunities, a well-managed green transition can become a new engine of economic growth. Investment in renewable energy, green infrastructures, and sustainable agricultures reduce reliance on volatile commodity sectors and also support more diversified, resilient economies. New industries from solar manufacturing to bioenergy value chains create high-quality employment and stimulate technology progress. And as Indonesia is striving to reduce our dependence on imported fossil fuels through geothermal and biofuel development, we strengthen the trade balance as well as shield economies from global price fluctuation. However, these opportunities come with formidable macroeconomic challenges for us. Sustainable development projects, including in energy transition in emerging markets, are often faced with elevated risk perception, resulting in higher financing costs, and public resources alone cannot bridge this gap. Large upfront investment for climate-resilient infrastructures must be balanced with critical spending on health, education, and poverty alleviation, especially during these global economic uncertainties. For climate-vulnerable countries like Indonesia, the macroeconomic risks of failing to adapt are severe. Increasing climate-related disasters impose recurring fiscal burdens, disrupt supply chains, as well as erode long-term growth. Adaptation, therefore, for us is an investment in national and regional stability. To address this, Indonesia proposes a strategy centers on diversify the financing, build resilience, as well as building regional cooperation. Blended finance, such as our experience with the Just Energy Transition Partnership, is critical for crowding in private capital. We also support Sevilla commitment in promoting innovative instruments such as green bonds and debt for climate swap to ease fiscal pressures. Resources need to be directed toward adaptation, including climate-resilient infrastructures, early warning system, as well as sustainable agriculture. Regional initiatives such as what we have in this region, such as ASEAN Power Grid, as well as other regional investment platforms, can pool risks, enhance bankability, and attract larger flows of international finance. Chair, the climate change is indeed a defining macroeconomic challenge and opportunity of our era. Indonesia believes by working together to overcome financing constraints and seizing the opportunities of green economy, we can build a climate resilience as a Pacific that is more sustainable, more inclusive, and more economically secure for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. We have Fiji on our list now, to be followed by Bangladesh.
Thank you, Chair. The contents of the document prepared by the Secretariat on this agenda item is acknowledged. Fiji welcomes discussions on this topic, which is of critical importance to us as a small island developing country in the Pacific region. In light of the time allocated, Fiji will only be sharing feedback on key areas based on existing circumstances in the country. In recognition of the serious economic implications that climate change impacts pose, Fiji has prioritized climate resilient and sustainable development at the core of its national development planning framework. This is reflected in Fiji's recently developed National Development Plan 2025 to 2029, which outlines a number of priority reforms and initiatives that must be implemented within the next 5 years in order to build our long-term resilience. One of these key priorities is to strengthen the integration of climate change resilience and sustainability into our national planning frameworks, public financial management, and public investment management systems. This is also reflected in Fiji's climate law, the Climate Change Act 2021, which aims to institutionalize governance arrangements on climate change response. In line with this reform, the government of Fiji has adopted a number of initiatives, including but not limited to integrating climate change resilience into the formulation of its national development plan, exploring the development of a climate budget tagging system, exploring the integration of climate and disaster risk screening in our public sector investment program guidelines, introducing a physical assessment tool to diagnose potential physical-related risk in a fiscal year, and conducted a climate public investment management assessment to diagnose the existing PIMA framework and assess the country's capacity to manage climate-related infrastructure. Despite this progress, Mr. Chair, gaps and challenges still exist in fully operationalizing some of these reforms within our national institutions. The opportunity to strengthen capacity within our national institutions in this particular field is an area of improvement. One of the major gaps that the government of Fiji currently recognizes is the need to strengthen our macroeconomic modeling and policy planning within the government machinery. This will ensure an evidence-based approach to policy making and better integration between national development plans, fiscal policies, and annual national budgets. Mr. Chair, Fiji supports the draft decision as outlined in the document and would request that consideration also be given to the experiences shared by small island developing economies with a clearer insight on how they can improve macroeconomic planning for climate change through national institutions as a result of enhanced policy research, technical assistance, and peer-to-peer learning provided through the Secretariat. I thank you.
Well noted, Fiji, particularly that last point concerning seeds. We move to Bangladesh to be followed by Vietnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the ESCAP Secretariat for the insightful report on macroeconomic implications of pursuing climate resilient development. As one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, Bangladesh views climate resilience not only as an environmental necessity, but as a macroeconomic priority. Our experience shows that climate change directly affects productivity, food security, fiscal stability, and long-term growth prospects. For us, the question is not whether to act, but how to act decisively and equitably. Over the past decade, Bangladesh has made sound economic progress, achieving sustained GDP growth, near self-sufficiency in food, and significant poverty reduction. Yet frequent climate-induced disasters, cyclones, floods, heat stress continue to impose substantial economic cost, often equivalent to 2% of our GDP annually. These impacts undermine infrastructure, disrupt supply chains, and demand higher public expenditure for recovery and social protection. Mr. Chair, in response, Bangladesh has integrated climate resilience into its macroeconomic policy frameworks. The Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, Climate Prosperity Plan, and our 8th five-year plan all places emphasis on low carbon and inclusive growth. Our Delta Plan 2006 to ensure long-term water and food security while safeguarding economic assets. These are complemented by the issuance of green and sustainability bonds and the integration of climate budget tagging in national fiscal management covering over 25 ministries. Our central bank, the Bangladesh Bank, has introduced a green refinance scheme and mandated environmental risk assessment in lending, aligning financial supervision with climate resilience objectives. These objectives demonstrate how fiscal, monetary, and financial policies can reinforce one another in managing transition risk while creating new opportunities for green investment and employment. However, as a climate vulnerable developing country nearing LDC graduation, Bangladesh faces critical challenges: limited fiscal space, rising adaptation cost, and the need for affordable long-term finance and technology transfer. We urge that international financial architectures, including the multilateral development banks and climate funds, be reformed to provide greater and easier access to concessional and innovative financing for countries like ours. Debt sustainability and resilience building must go hand in hand. Bangladesh has flagged these issues recently submitted in its NDC 3.0. Regionally, Bangladesh advocates stronger South-South cooperation, including under ESCAP's remit to share experiences, build capacity, and mobilize resources for a just and inclusive transition. We also call for enhanced data and analytical tools to access the macroeconomic implications of climate shocks, an area where ESCAP's technical support can make a real difference. Mr. Chair, Bangladesh firmly believes that climate resilient development is essential for sustaining economic growth and poverty reduction. We remain committed to working with all partners to align fiscal prudence, social inclusion, and environmentally sustainability towards a future of climate resilience and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Bangladesh. We have Vietnam to be followed by Japan.
Mr. Chair, I would like to thank the Secretariat for the very timely focus of this agenda item. We wish to offer a few comments. Vietnam fully shares a statement that pursues climate resilient development and debt and complex macroeconomic implications for countries in the Asia-Pacific region. More frequent and severe climate shock translate into higher budgetary pressure, greater uncertainty for investors, and increased risk through debt, sustainability, and financial stability. At the same time, the scale of resources needed for resilient infrastructure, adaptation, and disaster risk reduction and is immense, especially for developing and middle-income economies. Vietnam is among the countries highly vulnerable to climate change, particularly to sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, typhoons, and floods. In recent years, we have been working to integrate climate consideration more systematically into our macro-fiscal policies. This includes incorporating climate and disaster risks into medium-term fiscal and public investment framework, prioritizing green and resilient infrastructure, developing green finance and climate-related instruments, and strengthening the management of contingent liabilities and fiscal risk related to natural disaster. However, we recognize that these efforts also create new policy trade-offs. We must maintain macroeconomic stability, safeguard debt sustainability, support growth and social protection, while at the same time scaling up climate-related investment. For many countries, including Vietnam, this requires better tools to measure climate risk, to estimate adaptation needs, and to quantify their fiscal and macro-financial impacts. In this context, we urge the Secretariat to scale up policy research, technical assistance, and peer learning initiatives. From Vietnam's point of view, it would be particularly valuable and helpful if ESCAP could first, develop practical guidance to integrate climate and disaster risks into macro-fiscal frameworks, medium-term expenditure plans, and debt sustainability analysis. Second, support member states in costing and prioritizing adaptation and resilient investment and assessing their macroeconomic implications. Third, facilitate knowledge sharing on effective fiscal and financial instruments for climate resilience, including disaster risk financing, green bond guarantee, and other innovative risk sharing mechanisms. And fourth, help countries to better assess climate-related concessional finance and explore options such as blended finance and, where appropriate, debt for climate or debt for nature swaps. Vietnam stands ready to share our experience, to learn from others, and to work closely with ESCAP in this important area, and we look forward to continue collaboration to strengthen macroeconomic resilience and pursue long-term prosperity in climate-conscious world. We thank you all.
Thank you, Vietnam. We have Japan on our list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Japan's experience shows that climate change is not only an environmental challenge, but also a macroeconomic one. To secure long-term prosperity, we must integrate climate or overall disaster risk resilience into every aspect of policymaking. First, Japan has developed analytical tools to measure the socioeconomic impacts of transition. For example, sectoral roadmaps in energy and industry helps us understand risks to vulnerable communities and guide investments towards sustainable growth. Second, climate considerations are now embedded in our fiscal and monetary frameworks. Japan's climate transition bonds and green transformation strategy align public budgets with decarbonization, while financial supervisors encourage banks to assess climate risks, ensuring stability during the transition. Third, institutional capacity and coordination are essential. Japan's ministries and agencies work together on climate finance frameworks, showing how interagency collaboration can strengthen governance and accelerate action. Regional cooperation is vital in this effort. Through initiatives like the Article 6 Implementation Partnership, Japan shares knowledge and mobilizes resources to support countries at different stages of readiness. Finally, Japan thinks that the fundamental issue discussed here relates not just to climate, but to overall disaster risk reduction, given their pertinence. Japan has advanced financial innovation to mobilize private investment in DRR through the work of Development Bank of Japan, a government-owned financial institution which introduced the world's first business continuity management rating loan program. Through this program, DBJ assesses a company's disaster preparedness and offers preferential loan conditions to those demonstrating higher resilience. This is enabled by DBJ's low funding costs and its policy mandate, which allows it to integrate non-financial risks such as disaster preparedness into credit pricing. In effect, DBJ rewards resilience as a marker of lower financial risk, treating preparedness as a value-creating investment. Hundreds of companies in Japan have already benefited, strengthening their resilience, reducing financing costs, and enhancing their reputation. In short, Japan's experience highlights 4 lessons. The public sector must lead efforts to support investments that minimize losses to society, collaborate across sectors to build analytical tools, integrate pertinent risks into macro frameworks, strengthen relevant institutions, and expand regional cooperation. These steps can support resilient and inclusive economic growth in a changing climate. As for the decision text, it's important for the decision, therefore, to not assign an implicit hierarchy of risks and priorities given the breadth of challenges of today as noted in the conference document. As such, we propose text later in the session that fixate less on climate alone and make the text more general, allowing flexible focus on other forms of risks, such as uncertainties and risks they arise, as we've seen this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Thank you for that statement. Any other country delegation wishing to take the floor? If that is not the case, we shall move to international organizations, and to make a segue from Japan's statement, may I invite UNDRR to please make its statement.
Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction Global Assessment Report 2025 points to a deeply concerning trajectory. Annual direct disaster losses now reach around $200 billion, while indirect and cascading impacts rise to global total to over $2.3 trillion, or about 2% of global GDP. These losses arise from the full multi-hazard spectrum outlined in Sendai framework, including the geophysical and technological, biological, and environmental hazards. A comprehensive all-hazard approach is therefore essential. Disaster risk reduction and resilience offer some of the highest return on public investment. For instance, early warning systems have high cost saving and returns in the range of 1 to 20 cost-benefit ratio. 24 hours of lead time can reduce damage by up to 30%. Investment can either increase or reduce disaster risk. Investing in disaster risk reduction, structural and non-structural measures is thus a fundamental pillar of macroeconomic and fiscal stability, economic growth and welfare, and the achievement of the SDGs. UNDRR is keen to support countries in these areas to develop comprehensive disaster risk reduction financing strategies to bring into an integrated framework disaster risk information, budget planning, preventive and climate adaptation investment, and financial instruments to ensure DRR is embedded in public finance and development planning, and to perform disaster risk-informed fiscal stress testing, which project the micro-fiscal impacts of disaster scenarios to anticipate effects on revenue, expenditure, debt, and growth, and strengthen medium-term fiscal planning. To apply the principle and tools for resilience infrastructure developed with partners, resilience infrastructure remain central to reducing risk. Resilient transport, energy, water, health, and education system reduce not only direct assets losses, but also cascading disruption across economies. Every $1 invested in resilient infrastructure yield up to $4 in benefit. To apply a recovery, readiness framework and assessment tool, the recovery readiness is a crucial. Countries that establish recovery frameworks clarifying governance, financing arrangement, risk information requirements, and build back better standards ahead of disaster, not post-disasters. Shorten recovery time, accelerate reconstruction, and reduce medium and long-term economic losses. Instrument to all this is loss and damage data. UNDRR provides support to countries to enhance national and local loss and damage accounting system, allowing governments to assess the full cost of disaster and guide resources allocation for recovery and risk-informed development planning and investment. Excellencies, on 13 October, we marked the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction with a simple message: let us fund resilience, not disaster. By investing in early warning system, recovery readiness, resilience infrastructure, losses and damage accounting, and risk assessment systems, and DRR financing strategies, countries can reduce losses, enhance stability, and build a safer and prosperous future for all. Thank you.
Thank you, UNDRR. I find that information on loss and damage accounting to be particularly useful. Any other international organizations? Sorry, is that
ADPC?
ADPC, right, please, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. As we all know, the Asia-Pacific region is on the front line of global climate and disaster crisis. And communities are facing increasingly frequent and intense shocks that threaten development gains, strain public finances, and slow progress towards the SDGs. And therefore, financing for resilience is crucial. Disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation require scalable, predictable, and accessible investments. Without these, developing countries will continue to face losses that exceed their capacity to respond and recover. The decision to establish a new collective quantified goal of at least $300 billion annually by 2035 for climate finance is a significant milestone. But turning this commitment into action and also ensuring affordability and transparent tracking of progress will be critical for countries across our region. We also welcome the fund for responding to loss and damages first call for funding requests, supported by an initial $250 million allocation that we believe will be beneficial for less developed countries and small island development states. As ADPC, we look forward to working with ESCAP member states and partners to strengthen financing for disaster risk reduction and also climate resilience, and to ensure that these efforts deliver tangible benefits for communities on the ground. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, ADPC. Let's hope that COP30 makes some concrete progress in operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund. Any other international organization? I see no requests, so we move to other entities, and here we would like to hear from a youth representative, again from Asian Institute of Technology.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates and participants, my name is Asma, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Asian Institute of Technology as the youth representative. It is an honor to address this 5th session of the Committee on Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development and to present the perspectives and aspirations of young people across the region. Youth are acutely aware of what is at stake in pursuing climate-resilient development. We recognize the region's exposure to natural disasters and the disproportionate impact on vulnerable communities. The cost of inaction is immense. Transitioning to greener, more sustainable economies is urgent and essential for long-term resilience. Across the Asia and the Pacific, young people see and feel the direct effects of climate change. Agricultural communities central to employment and economic mobility are particularly affected. Limited public understanding of climate change, the high cost of sustainable finance, and the growing burden of disaster recovery highlight the need for strengthened action. Yet, meaningful youth participation in planning remains limited, hindering the integration of our perspectives into policymaking. Nevertheless, we stand ready to contribute. We are an informed and engaged generation, sharing knowledge, supporting green jobs, and driving innovation. Youth across the region are leading research and advancing solutions for a sustainable future. Therefore, we call on member states and the United Nations system to create meaningful avenues for youth participation in policymaking at all levels, ensure equitable access to technologies and innovations that support climate-resilient development, including for vulnerable groups, youth and women, maintain and expand UN platforms for youth engagement to promote inclusive dialogue, strengthen data monitoring and follow-up mechanisms for the Paris Agreement, the several commitments, and the 2030 Agenda, adopt innovations and AI responsibly, considering their resource demands and environmental impact. Excellencies, climate-resilient development is not a choice, it is imperative. Its future is being shaped today by and with young people. We urge you to work with us and ensure our voices help guide the decisions shaping our shared future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Asma. Thanks for that statement. Absolutely, I think we should often feel guilty, actually, the kind of world that we are leaving behind for our younger people. So it would be largely upon all of you to invest further in innovation, as you have rightly pointed out, to help address the challenges that are staring before your generation. And good luck with that. I think we have a request for a right of reply from the delegation of China, but we would like to take it towards the end of the session after we have looked at the draft decision. Thank you for that understanding. So we shall now move on to the draft decision under this agenda item. Let's have it on screen. I did interrupt the Russian Federation while it was trying to make some comments on the draft decision. I'll start with Russia, therefore.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Как я частично успела сказать во время выступления, мы бы хотели заменить формулировку in the context of changing climate conditions на формулировку in the context of multiple environmental challenges faced by the region. Multiple environmental challenges faced by the region. Спасибо.
Thank you, Russian Federation. As you would note, I mean, the agenda item is macroeconomic implications of pursuing climate resilient development. So we have to see if we are actually diverting away from the focus of these discussions by this change. But let's hear from the others a little bit. I understand when multiple environmental challenges are being talked about, we are probably looking at climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, right? I mean, all three major challenges. Any other comments? Yes, Japan, please.
So I have a bit more of a change in line with the, what I mentioned in my speech with regard to this text referring to noting the diverse and complex macroeconomic challenges. And indeed, we've certainly seen a host of those this year. And we think that it would be more pertinent for ESCAP to be able to address those macroeconomic challenges as they arise in the region, rather than having a very static, one form of risk all the time. So noting that text that we have in the second line there, we suggest the following edits. First, delete to strengthen its, and then cut and paste the policy research, technical assistance, and peer learning initiatives after economic prosperity, and before the after prosperity, add through, and then after request the Secretariat to continue to, so before support, to continue to support member states in addressing such challenges for and then at the end of the sentence, within existing resources and mandates. And in our thing, we suggest deleting in the context of blah, blah, blah. So in the context of all the way to multiple challenges, in the context of, it's a bracket before within existing resources to make it more simple. But this is just to kind of maybe we may be, instead of having a pre-established fixed one form of risk all the time, given the breadth of issues that are being faced by the region in the form of macroeconomic shock, we thought that maybe perhaps this formulation can address that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would have perhaps just added the word evolving to respond to your issue. I mean, diverse, evolving, and complex macroeconomic challenges. But that's fine. The US, please.
Well, maybe a moot, thank you, Chair. This may be a moot point now with Japan's additions, but I just wanted, when we say strengthen in the initial draft, that implies it will be doing more than it is doing, the Secretariat will be doing more than it is doing than the status quo, which I suppose would come with, as I understand generally how we spend and receive money, resources. But it sounds like that's not the case, so welcome clarification. Thank you.
So can you repeat the question again? I mean,
does this have any resource implications? Thank you. Sorry for the loquaciousness.
Yes, Secretariat.
I can confirm no additional implications whatsoever. Strengthen simply means going from basic assessment to a little more deeper analysis from existing resources.
Thank you. That should be helpful. Any other comments? So no mention of climate resilient development at all in the decision point. UK, please.
Thank you, Chair. We support Japan's addition of within existing resources and mandates, but we'd oppose, for the reasons you just outlined, any deletion of a reference to environmental challenges or climate conditions. I think we'd be happy with either of those, but given this is a decision about pursuing climate resilient development, we think it would kind of be nonsensical to remove a reference to climate or environment. Thanks.
Thank you. China.
谢谢主席。既然秘书处已经澄清了 to strengthen its 这种表述，并没有这个预算方面的影响，我看不出来为什么需要把这个 to strengthen its 来这个删除。我希望能够保留，谢谢。
No, not really. China didn't support that. Oh, semicolon, okay. Right. Any other comments? The US, please.
Well, we seem to be pushing this around a little bit and not necessarily accelerating towards success. And I wonder if this is a necessary decision to the Secretariat's work, or do we have to have a decision here? How would it impact your work if we did not have a decision?
Throwing the baby with the bathwater? I mean,
just testing options.
How would it impact your work?
Well, there's a short answer, there's a long answer. The short answer is not really, but since we have invested quite a lot of effort since last year and we continue to work in this area and we have brought it to the attention of member states right in the middle of our ongoing research, I think it will be very important and necessary to have a decision, something that acknowledges our existing research and something that we intend to do for Survey 2026. That's our basic response to that. So we will request you to maintain the decision, albeit with some amendments, that's fine.
And I would add that, I mean, we have heard a number of climate vulnerable countries that have talked about macroeconomic modeling, adaptation and just transition, risk analytics and so forth. And in that context, they have actually talked about the usefulness of policy research, technical assistance and peer learning initiatives that ESCAP is providing. So probably there would be some value in having this decision to reinforce those points. But that's just 2 cents from me. Let's try to clean up the text, but let's hear from Japan, if you have any way forward.
Well, so if we were to have a decision on this, and this is with a view, the new element here is that the diverse and complex macroeconomic challenges. Now, this has been really real this year. We all see that in the GDP fluctuations, et cetera. But when we are set on just a particular path, or continuing on a particular path, then maybe the Secretariat can't flexibly acknowledge some of the really poignant risks that are being faced by the region. So this is the element which I think would be value added to add in a decision text. So I don't mind if it's such challenges, including multiple environmental challenges, et cetera. I think that would be fine. But if there is a risk that is new and that is impacting the region, maybe the Secretariat might think that that is actually a bigger incremental shock to the macroeconomic economies of the region. So this is the gist of why I propose the edits. So I'm flexible to say such challenges, including blah, blah, blah. With regard to the word strengthen, the reason why I'm a little bit uncomfortable about that is in any case, we have the UN 80 constraint, and we know what the constraint is. And even if we have your assurances, I think when you just read the text, it does read like enforcing increasing capacities. So given that if we have a little bit more of a general approach in addressing the risks, we feel comfortable to continue to sort of in line with what we had earlier discussed on leveraging existing processes. Thank you.
Thank you. On your first point, Japan, that's a valid argument. There are probably new challenges, but again, I mean, since you're used to multilateral negotiations, if we try to make a list, that would again kind of unnecessarily open up a lot of discussions, because different country contexts would come up with different challenges that we would like to flag here. So I would request that let's not go down that route. I had suggested a word, maybe diverse, evolving, and complex challenges, just to flag that there are new challenges which are being faced by this region. We could probably look into that possibility. So let's try to clean up the text a little bit. Can we live within existing resources and mandates towards the very end? I think that should be fine, so let's keep that. Japan has shown some flexibility, and UK insisted on keeping the reference to multiple environmental challenges. Let's try to keep that. Let's delete Russia as well. We can delete changing climate conditions. The syntactical changes, I don't think that should be a major issue. Now, between to strengthen and to continue, as you have heard, that there is no additional financial or resource implications, which is again a point that has been made at the end. Can we at least use the word strengthen? Or we can use both, to continue and strengthen. That laughter, I take it for some endorsement, so let's try that, to continue and strengthen. Yes, the US, please.
I might just recommend moving the within existing resources and mandates up, so that it reads the Secretariat to continue and strengthen within existing resources and mandates, and then continue.
Sure. That's probably the appropriate placement. So yeah, let's clean up the text and see how it looks. Secretariat to continue and strengthen within existing resources and mandates its support to member states, right? Or how does it read? Request the Secretariat to continue and strengthen within existing resources to support. No, it's okay. Or it's support to member states, maybe, yeah. Support to member states. Yes. The US, please.
I think you just need to change challenges for macroeconomic resilience to like challenges such as or including.
No, but in addressing such challenges for macroeconomic resilience. Doesn't, I mean, sound very elegant, but in addressing such challenges for macroeconomic resilience and pursuing long-term economic prosperity. For promoting macroeconomic resilience, yeah, for promoting or ensuring, promoting maybe, yeah. In addressing such challenges for promoting or towards promoting macroeconomic resilience and pursuing long-term economic prosperity, yeah, towards. The editors will fix this. I mean, let's leave the grammar to the editors, maybe. Yes, the native speakers, no hesitation, please go ahead.
We were discussing changing it to its support to member states in addressing challenges, in promoting macroeconomic resilience. Support member states in promoting macroeconomic resilience.
Good, more concise. I like this.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, go on.
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe all in the context of multiple environmental challenges faced by the region. So after peer learning initiatives, comma, all in the context
Now
of...
you're being too native of a speaker. I mean,
I just think it needs a break there. And
I know, but let's leave it, please. I mean, again. Okay, Japan.
So the original point was that the challenges are not the same challenge that we keep addressing everything. It starts getting
For the
a little
third time round,
stale.
I will put the word I've been suggesting. After diverse, can we add evolving, please? Or emerging? Yes, thank you, Mr. Malik. Emerging.
So we want to address those types of challenges that's mentioned on the second line, not on one particular thing every single year. That's the gist of what I was trying. I don't know whether the current edit really captures that element.
No,
anymore,
we will read the second part in light of the first part. I mean, let's give ourselves some benefit of doubt. So first, we are talking about the diverse, emerging, and complex macroeconomic challenges. And in light of those challenges, we request the Secretariat to continue and strengthen its support to member states for macroeconomic resilience and long-term economic prosperity. It's fine. Anything else? Thank you. That's the multilateral spirit prevailing here. Good. So agreed ad ref. Okay, almost towards the end. There was a request for a right of reply. The floor is to China.
谢谢主席。针对一国代表声称一个国家不再是发展中国家的发言，中国代表团作出回应。 中国是公认的发展中国家，不仅有充分的事实依据，也有坚实的国际法依据。中国人均 GDP 相当于发达国家的1/5，它的人均国民总收入与主要发展中国家相当。维护发展中国家地位是中国的合理合法权利。中国没有将发展中国家地位当作逃避国际责任的挡箭牌，或是获取特殊优待的敲门砖，而是积极为推动世界和平与发展做出更多中国贡献。主要发达国家应当切实兑现官方发展援助承诺，而不要把时间浪费在否定中国的发展中国家地位上。谢谢。
Thank you, China. While that statement is well noted, I think the statement that you have been referring to, I do not quite recall that it talked about any one particular country as such, but probably we'll have to go back to the records for that. But just wanted to assure you that as far as the chair is concerned, I did not hear that that statement was directed to any particular country. Thank you. Any other points? If that is not the case, any announcement from the Secretariat? Good. So we reconvene at 10 in the morning tomorrow. Yes, the US, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to exercise the right to reply in that context as well. And you're correct, a specific country was not mentioned during my statement, but in fact, China has insisted for years, and as we just heard, continues to insist that it be considered and treated as a developing country, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. As I mentioned, a country that can fund its own space program, can build aircraft carriers, should be able to fund its own development. Indeed, it is long past time that China relinquishes its claim to developing country status in multilateral institutions, treating China, the second largest economy in the world, as a developing country is absurd. Every UN dollar spent in China is one less for countries that truly depend on that funding. Letting China draw on UN resources also risks subsidizing one country's geopolitical agenda under a multilateral umbrella. The UN was formed to support the vulnerable, not underwrite geopolitical ambitions of a major power. This is why we will oppose the expenditure of UN funds in China. Simply put, these funds are better spent elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Well noted. China, the second request for right of reply, you will have 2 minutes for this one. Thank you.
谢谢主席。虽然美国代表在发言的时候并没有点名我的国家，但是明眼人都知道他是指的是谁。我要明确地告诉他，中国属不属于发展中国家，不由美国说了算。美方试图否定中国的发展中国家地位，其真实意图无外乎是打压、遏制中国的发展空间，挑拨中国与发展中国家友好关系，干扰和迟滞发展中国家群体性崛起的趋势。中方将坚定维护自身发展中国家地位，大力深化同发展中国家团结合作，坚定不移致力于推动发展中国家提高发展中国家在国际治理体系中的代表性和发言权，坚定捍卫发展中国家的正当合法权益。美国不要见不得发展中国家进步和发展。 谢谢。
Thank you, China. The US, the second request for right of reply, you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I emphasized in my remarks earlier that we seek a UN that works, a UN that makes sense, a UN that delivers results, a UN that delivers development assistance to the second largest economy in the world doesn't make sense. It puts money into the pockets of China's government, while other countries come here and tell us that how much they need that development assistance. It is not a threat to developing countries, or it is an acknowledgement of China's growth as an economy over the previous decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other request? That does not seem to be the case, so we conclude this session and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. The session is adjourned.